"Daddy, she looks like Mommy." The whisper came from the wagon seat beside him, small and unsure. But it landed like a gunshot in Ezra Cole's chest. His hands tightened on the reins as the horses slowed without command. For a heartbeat, the world stopped moving. Snow hung in the air. Breath froze in his lungs. Ezra did not turn right away, because he already knew what would happen if he did. But then he looked. A woman stood alone on the platform at Red Hollow Station, her back bent slightly against the cold. She wore a wedding dress ruined by snow and soot. The white turned gray, the hem soaked through. Her shoulders trembled, not with wind but with quiet breaking sobs. She looked small against the wide Montana winter, like something the world had forgotten to protect. Ezra should have driven on. He knew that. He had spent 3 years learning how to drive on. Winter came early to Montana Territory in 1884, the kind of winter that didn't ask permission. Snow buried the tracks. Trains screamed through the plains hours late if they came at all. Red Hollow Station was nothing more than a platform, a shack, and the kind of silence that made lonely thoughts louder. The woman's name was Lillian Moore, though no one at the station knew it. She stood where the eastbound train had just left her, smoke dissolving into the steel-colored sky. In her gloved hand was a return ticket she hadn't asked for. In the other, a carpet bag holding everything she owned and everything she had lost. The dress had taken 3 months to sew, candlelight, pricked fingers, hope stitched into every seam. 4 days ago, the man she was meant to marry had married someone else. Lillian stared at the snow at her feet, unable to move. The cold had worked its way into her bones, making thought feel heavy. The station master had offered a boarding house 2 miles away. She hadn't answered. Walking felt impossible. Tomorrow felt worse. Ezra watched her from the wagon, jaw tight, heart locked behind walls he had sworn would never fall again. Beside him, his daughter Anna clutched her blanket. Blue eyes fixed on the woman in the dress. "She smells sad," Anna whispered, "like Mommy did when she stopped singing." Ezra flinched. He wrapped the reins around the brake. The wagon came to a stop, and with it the life Ezra Cole had been barely holding together began to crack open. Ezra climbed down from the wagon slowly, as if sudden movement might shatter what little balance he had left. Snow crunched beneath his boots. The woman did not look up when he stopped a few paces away. Her face was turned slightly aside, lashes clumped with frozen tears, cheeks pale and raw from the cold. "You all right, miss?" he asked. His voice sounded wrong to his own ears. Too rough, too unused. She tried to answer. Whatever word she reached for never made it past her throat. She shook her head once, a small, defeated motion that said more than speech ever could. Ezra followed her gaze. The wedding dress, the carpet bag, the return ticket clenched so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Understanding landed heavy in his chest. "You waiting on someone?" he asked. "No," she whispered. "No one's coming." Behind him, Anna shifted on the wagon seat, boots dangling, eyes too old for a child of 4. Ezra felt her watching him, felt the weight of a promise he'd made long ago pressing against his ribs. The wind cut sharper. Snow crept into the folds of the woman's dress. She swayed slightly, and Ezra saw the truth of it then. She wasn't choosing to stay there. Her body had simply run out of strength. "There's a boarding house," he said, though he already knew the answer. "In town." "I know." She didn't move. Ezra exhaled through his nose, slow and controlled. He turned back to the wagon and lifted his coat from the seat. It was heavy wool, still warm from his body. He stepped close again, close enough to smell coal smoke and lavender, and settled it around her shoulders before she could protest. "There," he said quietly. "Don't fight it." "I can't take that," she murmured. "You'll freeze." "I'm used to it." Her fingers curled into the coat without permission, like they belonged there. Ezra saw the way relief broke through her exhaustion, and something in him twisted hard and sharp. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lillian," she said after a moment. "Lillian Moore." He nodded. "Ezra Cole. That's my daughter Anna." Anna gave a solemn little wave from the wagon. "Hello." Lillian's mouth trembled. She tried to smile and failed. "We've got a ranch," Ezra said, each word costing him. "About an hour west. There's a fire. Hot food, you can warm up. In the morning, I'll take you wherever you need to go." She hesitated. Pride flickered, then died. "I don't have anywhere," she said. Ezra held out his arm. "Then you won't stand in the cold," he replied. And Lillian Moore, abandoned bride with nowhere left to fall, took it. The wagon rolled away from Red Hollow Station without ceremony. No one waved. No one called out. The wind swallowed the place as if it had never mattered at all. Lillian sat stiffly on the bench, Ezra's coat pulled tight around her shoulders. It smelled of smoke and leather and clean, cold air. Beside her, Anna leaned close, her small body radiating warmth through layers of wool. "You're really a bride?" Anna asked softly, careful, like she already knew the answer might hurt. "I was," Lillian said. Her voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. "Things changed." Anna thought about that for a long moment. "That's sad," she decided. "I'm sorry." "Thank you," Lillian said, surprised by how much it helped to hear it. Ezra kept his eyes on the trail ahead. The road was nothing more than two narrow ruts through the snow, barely visible as daylight faded. He didn't speak. Silence had become his safest habit. The cold deepened as the sky darkened. Stars began to prick through the clouds, sharp and distant. Lillian's hands shook despite the coat. The warmth hadn't reached her bones yet. "How long ago?" she asked suddenly. Ezra didn't answer at first. Then quietly, 3 years. She didn't need to ask what he meant. The way his shoulders locked told her enough. "I'm sorry," she said. "So is everyone," he replied, not unkindly but final. Anna's head drooped against Lillian's arm. The wagon rocked gently, and before long the child's breathing slowed into sleep. Lillian shifted carefully, letting Anna rest against her, afraid to move in case she disturbed the fragile trust forming between them. Lights appeared ahead, a barn first, then a low house, dark against the snow except for a single window glowing warm and gold. Ezra pulled the wagon to a stop and set the brake. "I'll see to the horses," he said. "You take her inside. Fire's probably low. There's wood stacked by the hearth." He lifted Anna down first, then turned to Lillian. His hands found her waist, steady and sure, and lowered her to the ground as if she weighed nothing at all. For a brief moment, they were close enough for her to see the lines etched deep into his face. Grief lived there, but so did something else, endurance. The house was small but solid. The fire crackled weakly, just as Ezra had said. Lillian fed it wood until flames caught and spread. Warmth bloomed almost painfully. She set water to heat, found coffee by the stove, moved without thinking. Work steadied her. Anna stirred and smiled sleepily. "Daddy keeps the house nice," she murmured. "Mostly?" Lillian smiled back, something fragile and real forming in her chest. For the first time since the train had left her behind, she didn't feel like she was disappearing. Ezra came in with the smell of snow and horses clinging to him. He stamped his boots by the door, then stopped when he saw the fire burning strong and Anna half asleep in the chair, wrapped in Lillian's arms. For a moment he just stood there. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or something closer to pain. "Water's heating," Lillian said softly. "I made coffee. I hope that's all right." "It's fine," he answered, voice rougher than he meant it to be. He shrugged out of his coat and hung it on a peg, not looking at her. Without it, the cold seemed not to touch him at all. He moved to the stove, set out bread and a pot of stew like it was routine, like there wasn't a stranger in his house wearing his coat and holding his child. "You should change out of that dress," he said. "It's soaked through." Lillian glanced down. The hem clung to her boots, dark with melted snow. I have another dress. In my bag. I left it at the station." Ezra turned, then nodded once. "I brought it." Station master handed it over. Her breath caught. "You didn't have to." "I know." Anna slid off the chair and took Lillian's hand. "You can use Daddy's room," she announced. "There's a screen." Before Lillian could protest, the child was already tugging her down the short hall. The room was simple, a bed, a cot, a folding screen. Nothing wasted. Behind the screen, Lillian worked the tiny buttons of her dress with numb fingers. Several fell free and vanished into the floorboards. When the fabric finally dropped away, she stood shivering, staring at the dress in a heap at her feet. She put on the plain gray wool from her bag. It fit, it always had, practical, invisible. When she returned, Ezra had set the table. Anna climbed into Lillian's lap without asking, like she'd been doing it forever. They ate quietly. Ezra said little. Anna said everything. By the time the dishes were done, the house felt warmer, not just from the fire. When it came time for sleep, Ezra didn't hesitate. "You take the bed," he said. "I'll use the chair." "I can't." "You will." His tone left no room for argument. Lillian didn't have the strength to fight him even if she wanted to. Later, lying beneath heavy quilts that smelled faintly of soap and wood smoke, she listened to the slow creak of the rocking chair in the other room. Ezra keeping watch, always keeping watch. In the darkness, tears slid silently into her hair. She had been ready to disappear that afternoon, and instead a stranger had stopped. In the other room, Ezra stared into the dying fire and wondered why he had. Dawn crept into the house slowly, pale light slipping through the frost-laced window. Lillian woke to the steady sound of an axe striking wood. The rhythm was controlled, relentless, like someone working to keep his thoughts at bay. For a moment she lay still, disoriented. Then memory returned. The station, the snow, Ezra Cole. She sat up carefully. Anna slept on, one small hand curled beneath her cheek. Lillian watched her breathe. Feeling an ache she didn't understand settled deep in her chest. In the main room, coffee steamed on the stove. Ezra stood outside the window, splitting wood with sharp, efficient swings. He worked like the cold was nothing. Like pain was something he could outpace if he moved fast enough. Lillian poured a cup and wrapped her hands around it. What now? She had a return ticket east. A future that led backward to a place where she wasn't wanted. Staying here wasn't an option. Charity always came with an end. Ezra came in, bringing the cold with him. He nodded once, a greeting compressed into a gesture. "You're up," he said. "I should head into town today," she replied. "I don't want to overstay." He didn't argue. He set out oatmeal and motioned for her to eat. "You'll need strength," he said. "It's a long ride." The word stung more than she expected. Of course he was taking her to town. This had always been temporary. Anna emerged then, hair tangled, eyes bright when she saw Lillian. "You're still here?" "For now," Lillian said gently. Anna's smile faded. "But you're coming back, right?" Ezra's jaw tightened. "Anna." Lillian knelt, taking the child's hands. "I have to figure some things out first, sweetheart." Anna's eyes filled. "Everybody leaves." The words cut deeper than any accusation. Ezra turned away, staring out the window. "Get dressed," he said to his daughter. "We're going into town." The ride was quiet. He helped Lillian down in front of a weathered boarding house and handed her the carpet bag. "Mrs. Turner runs it," he said. "Tell her I sent you." Anna clung to Lillian's skirt, then suddenly thrust something into her hand. A faded ribbon. "It was Mommy's," she whispered. "So you remember us?" Lillian knelt and tied it around her wrist, tears blurring her vision. "I'll remember," she promised. Ezra didn't look at her as he climbed back onto the wagon. Lillian stood on the porch and watched them go, her chest aching in a way that felt worse than the station ever had. Some losses came quietly. Others taught you what home felt like before taking it away. The boarding house smelled of bread and soap and other people's lives. Lillian stood just inside the doorway, her carpet bag at her feet. The pink ribbon warm against her wrist like a pulse that hadn't faded yet. Mrs. Turner was a solid woman with tired eyes and a sharp way of seeing. She studied Lillian once from damp hem to bare hand and nodded as if a conclusion had already been reached. "You'll want tea," she said. "Then we'll talk." Lillian nodded, grateful not to explain herself right away. Through the lace curtain she saw Ezra's wagon still in the street. Anna was talking animatedly, hands moving, pleading. Ezra shook his head once, then again. He climbed down, knelt in the snow and pulled his daughter into his arms. They stayed that way longer than necessary. Then he stood. The wagon rolled away. Lillian turned from the window before the ache broke her open. That night she took the small upstairs room Mrs. Turner offered. She unpacked slowly, carefully, as if the order might settle her thoughts. She found work helping with accounts and mending. Useful things. Safe things. Days passed. Bitter Creek was small. People talked. The abandoned bride. The widowed rancher who'd stopped his wagon. Pity followed her like a shadow. Then, 2 weeks later, she heard a voice she never wanted to hear again. "Miss Moore?" She turned in the general store to find Anna running toward her, joy lighting her face like sunrise. "You stayed," the child said breathlessly. "You didn't disappear." Ezra stood behind her, uncomfortable, guarded. They spoke little. Anna begged. Ezra resisted. Sunday dinner was agreed to like a ceasefire neither fully trusted. Sunday came. The ranch looked different in daylight. Less haunted, more alive. Dinner was simple. Conversation easier than expected. Anna laughed. Ezra watched Lillian like he was learning something dangerous. And when she left that evening, he said quietly, "I enjoyed today." 4 days later, Anna arrived alone, snow-dusted and frightened. "Daddy's sick," she said. "He won't stay in bed." Lillian didn't hesitate. The fever was bad, worse than she'd feared. She stayed. Fought. Sang when she thought no one could hear. On the third morning, Ezra woke. "You stayed," he said hoarsely. "Of course I did." Something shifted then. Not healed, but cracked open. And Lillian realized she hadn't been waiting anymore. She had already chosen. Ezra's fever broke just before dawn, leaving him weak and hollowed, like a storm that had burned itself out. Lillian sat beside the bed, exhausted beyond thought. watching the steady rise and fall of his chest as if afraid it might stop again if she looked away. When his eyes finally opened clear and aware, relief hit her so hard her hands trembled. "Don't move," she said quickly, pressing him back when he tried. "You've been sick. Very sick." He swallowed, throat raw. "Anna?" "Asleep?" Lillian said softly. "Right there." She gestured to the small shape curled at the foot of the bed. "She didn't leave your side." Ezra closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, they found Lillian's face, and something unguarded passed between them. "You sang," he said. She flushed. "I didn't think you could hear." "I heard everything." His voice was rough but steady. "You arguing with me, promising her I wouldn't die." "I had to," she said. "She's already lost too much." His hand moved, weak but deliberate, covering hers where it rested on the blanket. "So have you." The truth of it settled between them. Later that morning, when Ezra could sit without swaying, he asked the question he'd been holding back. "You could have gone back to town." "You didn't." Lillian met his eyes. "I wasn't waiting anymore." Anna woke to find them talking and smiled like the world had been set right. "Daddy's better," she announced. "That means Miss Lillian has to stay." Ezra looked at Lillian, fear and hope colliding in his expression. "I don't want to trap you here," he said quietly. "You deserve a choice." "I know," she replied. "And I choose to stay, for now, to see what this is." Relief crossed his face, followed quickly by something deeper. Gratitude, want. Days passed slowly as Ezra recovered. Lillian slept by the fire, keeping careful distance. But the air between them had changed. Touch lingered. Silence felt full instead of empty. Then one afternoon a rider came. The man dismounted with confidence that didn't belong in Bitter Creek, well-dressed, familiar. "Lillian," he said smoothly, "I've come to take you home." The past had found her, and it wasn't finished with her yet. The sound of that voice froze Lillian where she stood. Henry Caldwell looked exactly as he always had, polished, certain, like the world existed to bend in his favor. His coat was too fine for the ranch yard, his horse too well kept. He smiled as if this were a pleasant reunion and not a reopening of every wound she'd fought to close. Ezra stepped forward without thinking, placing himself between them. "You're on my land," he said evenly. "State your business." Henry's gaze flicked over him, dismissive. "Henry Caldwell. From Richmond. I'm here for Miss Moore." Lillian's stomach twisted. "You don't get to call me that anymore." Henry's smile tightened. "Your aunt sent me. You've embarrassed yourself long enough. This arrangement," his eyes swept the ranch, "has gone far enough." Ezra felt Anna's small hand slip into his. He looked down at her, then back at Lillian, reading the fear she was trying to hide. "I'm not going anywhere with you," Lillian said. "You lost that right when you left me on a platform in the snow." Henry's tone hardened. "You're an unmarried woman living unescorted with a widower and his child. In a town like this, reputation matters. You'll ruin yourself. You'll ruin them." The threat was clear. Ezra's jaw set. "You leave now." Henry laughed softly. "You think you can protect her from consequences? I can make sure every decent household in this territory knows exactly what kind of woman she is." Anna squeezed Ezra's hand harder. Lillian stepped forward. "Give me until tomorrow," she said. "Then you'll have your answer." Henry studied her, satisfied. "Very well. Tomorrow evening." He rode away without another word. Silence fell heavy over the yard. Ezra turned to Lillian, anger and fear warring in his eyes. "You don't owe him anything." "I owe Anna safety," she said quietly. "If he spreads lies." "Then we end it," Ezra said suddenly. She stared at him. "What?" "We get married. Today. Montana law allows it. Witnesses, a declaration." "He loses his leverage." Her breath caught. "Ezra, that's not how this should happen." "It's exactly how it should," he said. "Because I won't lose you?" "Not to him. Not to fear." Anna looked up between them, hope blazing. "Does this mean she stays?" Lillian looked at the child, at the man who had learned to live again, at the life standing fragile and brave in front of her. "Yes," she said. And for the first time the word felt like freedom. They rode into Bitter Creek with the sun barely clearing the mountains. The air was sharp, the kind that made every breath feel honest. Lillian sat straight in the wagon, hands folded in her lap, the faded ribbon still tied around her wrist. Ezra held the reins with steady focus. Between them, Anna bounced with barely contained excitement, swinging her legs like the day was a holiday. "Is there cake?" she asked for the third time. "Maybe," Ezra said, "if you behave." "I will," she promised immediately, then grinned. "Probably." Mrs. Turner was sweeping her porch when the wagon stopped. She took one look at their faces and dropped the broom. "Well," she said slowly, About time. Inside the small church with the crooked steeple, the town gathered fast. Word traveled quicker than wind in Bitter Creek. Shopkeepers, ranch hands, the schoolteacher, even the saloon owner slipped in, curious but quiet. They stood shoulder to shoulder, forming a wall of witnesses. Henry Caldwell arrived just as the minister stepped forward. "This is madness," Henry snapped. "You can't do this." "I already am," Lillian said calmly. "And I'm not asking your permission." Ezra stood at her side, solid and unyielding. His hand found hers. She didn't pull away. The minister spoke plainly. There were no flowers, no music. Just truth said aloud. "Do you take each other?" he asked. "To stand together from this day forward?" "I do," Ezra said without hesitation. "I do," Lillian answered, her voice steady. A simple gold band appeared from Mrs. Turner's pocket, pressed into Ezra's palm with a knowing nod. He slid it onto Lillian's finger like it had always belonged there. When the minister declared them married, Anna clapped so hard her mittens nearly fell off. Henry stood frozen, face pale with fury and disbelief. "You'll regret this," he hissed. Lillian met his gaze one last time. "I already survived you." They left the church together, husband, wife, and child, walking into the cold sunlight as if stepping into something newly born. Back at the ranch, Ezra lifted Lillian over the threshold with awkward determination. Anna laughed, racing ahead to declare the house officially theirs. That night by the fire, Ezra took Lillian's hands. "I won't promise perfection," he said, "but I'll promise honesty." "That's all I want," she replied. Outside, snow began to fall again, not as punishment this time, as a beginning. Marriage did not change the ranch overnight. The house was still small, the work was still hard, the past still lived in quiet corners, but something essential had shifted. Like a door finally left open to let air move through, Lillian learned the rhythms quickly. Morning fires, feeding animals before breakfast, the steady work of keeping a household breathing. Ezra watched her from a distance at first, as if afraid she might vanish if he looked too closely. Anna never gave him that chance. "Mama," she said freely now, the word falling from her mouth like it had always belonged there. Each time she said it, Lillian felt both humbled and terrified by the weight of it. They moved carefully with one another. Ezra did not rush Lillian into the role she had chosen. Lillian did not try to erase the woman who had come before her. Mara's shawl still rested on the chair. Her sampler still hung on the wall. Instead of resenting it, Lillian learned to live alongside it. One evening, as the snow softened into early thaw, Anna made an announcement. "We should plant something," she said seriously. "So Mama Mara and Mama Lillian are both part of the house." Ezra froze, then slowly nodded. "A tree," he said. "That lasts." They planted it together on the hill behind the barn. A slender sapling. Anna packed the earth with her boots. Lillian pressed her palms to the soil. Ezra stood back, quiet and reverent. That night, for the first time, Ezra slept without the chair creaking beneath him. Spring came hesitant but real. Mud replaced snow. Green pushed through stubborn ground. Lillian wrote letters she never sent and burned them instead. She balanced books. She learned to ride properly. Ezra taught her without softness but with patience. When Henry's name surfaced in town gossip, it no longer reached her. His power had ended the moment she chose not to be afraid. One evening, as sunlight spilled gold across the plains, Ezra took Lillian's hands and said simply, "I love you." She believed him. The words did not replace the past. They made room beside it. The second winter arrived quieter than the first. Snow fell gently this time, soft and patient, settling over the ranch like a promise kept. The house held its warmth better now, not because of thicker walls, but because of shared breath, shared laughter, shared silence that no longer hurt. Anna grew taller, louder, braver. She learned to read by the fire while Lillian mended and Ezra sharpened tools. Sometimes she read aloud, stumbling over long words, proud of every victory. Ezra listened like each sentence was a gift. On the hill, the young tree stood thin but alive, branches bare yet unbroken. Ezra checked it often as if guarding something sacred. One afternoon, Anna asked the question they had all been waiting for. "Will Mama Mara be mad?" she asked quietly. Ezra stilled. Lillian set her sewing aside. "No," Ezra said at last. "She'd want us warm. She'd want you happy." Lillian added softly, "Love doesn't get smaller when it's shared. It grows." Anna nodded, satisfied, and went back to her book. That night, Ezra woke from a dream he hadn't had in years. Mara's face, smiling, not fading, not accusing. He reached for Lillian in the dark, grounding himself in what was real. She stirred, fingers finding his without words. In town, people stopped whispering. The story changed, from scandal to survival, from pity to respect. Lillian became Mrs. Cole without losing herself. Ezra became a man who smiled again. Late one evening, as the fire burned low, Ezra spoke the words he'd been carrying since the station. "I stopped because Anna spoke," he said, "but I stayed because you did." Lillian leaned her head against his shoulder. "I didn't come here to be saved," she replied. "I came here to live." Outside, wind moved through the plains, not as a threat, but as a song that finally knew the words. And in the quiet that followed, Ezra understood something simple and final. The past had not loosened its hold. It had been gently, lovingly set down. Spring returned without asking permission, just as winter once had. This time it stayed. The tree on the hill bloomed in shy white petals, fragile but determined. Lillian stood beneath it with Anna, both of them watching the wind carry blossoms across the grass like scattered promises. "It lived," Anna said proudly. "Yes," Lillian replied. "It did." Ezra watched them from the fence line, his chest tight with a feeling he no longer tried to name or control. Life had not returned what it had taken from him. It had given him something different, something earned. That afternoon they rode into Bitter Creek together, not out of need, out of choice. Lillian walked beside Ezra through town, no longer watching the ground, no longer bracing for judgment. People nodded. Some smiled. The past stayed quiet. At the church, Anna lit a candle, one for Mama Mara, one for the life that followed. Back at the ranch, as dusk settled soft and gold, Ezra took Lillian's hands and spoke the truth. He had learned too late and just in time. "I thought loving again meant forgetting," he said. "I was wrong." Lillian squeezed his fingers. "Love remembers, and still moves forward." They stood together on the porch as stars emerged one by one, steady and unafraid. Anna leaned against them both, fitting perfectly between. Years later, Anna would tell the story simply. How her father stopped a wagon, how a bride didn't disappear, how a family chose each other. But for now there was only this moment. The wind, the light, the quiet certainty that some endings are only beginnings in disguise. And in the place where grief once lived alone, love remained. If this tale stirred your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Tales from the Frontier, where history rides the frontier. Courage is tested and love refuses to die. Until the next tale. Ride on, partner.